Hi, I'm here on behalf of IAPT to offer some advice and some practical tips to anybody that might be having difficulty with sleep at the moment, which I imagine is probably quite a few of us, given the rather challenging circumstances we find ourselves in at the moment. We know that in times of raised anxiety and periods of stress, sleep tends to be the first thing to go, and it's often the last thing to return once that stressful period is over, which is rather frustrating. But actually from an evolutionary perspective, it does make complete sense. Back in caveman days, if we were under threat, it would be really important that our bodies keep us in a state of, keep us awake and keep us in a state of high alert in order to be able to fight off or fly from that danger. Now, in 2020, we're not under the same threats as we were back in caveman days, but actually we are dealing with a really unknown threat at the moment. So none of us have contended with this before. So I think, know that it's probably quite normal that you might be having difficulties with sleep at the moment. So I'd say just be really kind to yourself. I think it can be quite easy to become quite fixated on it. I know when I work with clients that are not sleeping, it can be common to have some catastrophic thoughts around that. So like thoughts of this lack of sleep is going to put my health at risk, or it's going to reduce my immunity, the fact that I'm not sleeping, or I'm really not going to be able to cope. I'm not going to be able to cope with the children the next day if I've not slept, or I'm never gonna, my sleep pattern will never return, I'll never be me, and all them unhelpful thoughts add an extra layer on top of it really. So I'd say just be mindful of them, and just be really kind to yourself. Know that actually it's just a normal response to the difficult circumstances we find ourselves in, and actually as humans we are quite adaptable, and although obviously sleep is really important for good health and well-being, actually reduced sleep over short periods, actually we adapt quite well to that, and it doesn't have too much of a negative impact on us. So you might find that actually after a couple of weeks, when you start to establish a new normal, you might find that your sleep does start to return. Having said that, there are some very practical things that you can do to try and improve your chances of getting a good night's sleep, or to try and improve the quality of your sleep. And I'm just going to go through a few of them with you now. So the first idea is to go to sleep when you're sleepy. So I know for a lot of people, when you're not sleeping, it can be tempting to try and go to bed earlier to make up for it. But actually, if you're going to bed and you're not tired, you're kind of setting yourself up to fail, really. You're already starting on the back foot. So actually wait till that point that you're actually tired. So, don't just go to bed because your partner's going to bed, or because there's nothing left to watch on telly, or because it's the time you've always gone to bed. Actually work out what point is it that you feel tired. And the likelihood is that might have changed now. So if you've gone from having quite a physically or mentally demanding job, it might have been that at 10:30 you were ready for bed, whereas now maybe if you've been furloughed and you're not working, actually you just don't need as much sleep as you did 3 weeks ago. So just explore that a bit. Explore what time you actually feel tired, and then make that your new bedtime. And you might find that by pushing that back an hour or two, or an hour and a half, you might find that if you're someone that's waking at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, that actually by pushing that bedtime back, you push that wake up point back as well till 6, half 6, which feels a bit more acceptable to most people. So having said that, once you've established that point in which you're tired, the advice would be to then stick to a solid routine. So stick to that same bedtime and wake up time. each day. And we know that your brain and your mental well-being really thrives on a routine, and it's really important for your circadian rhythm as well, to go to bed and to wake up at the same time. And that can be really hard, you know, particularly if you're not sleeping, or you haven't got that structure that you had at one time. It can be hard to you know, if you've not slept, it can be really tempting to have an extra hour in bed, or it can be tempting to have an extra hour in bed on the weekend. But actually, if you're having problems with your sleep, that's really counterproductive. So I'd really encourage you to try and be quite boundaried with that. And sometimes thinking about the daytime routine can be helpful, and we will upload another video about daytime routine. You know, it's really helpful to have something scheduled in. If you're not at work at the moment, you know, it's important to have something to get up for. So yeah, so thinking about your daytime routine as well is important. The other idea is, I mean, quite basic really, but sometimes the basics I think can be overlooked, is your caffeine consumption. I think most of us are aware that caffeine is a stimulant, and it can actually impair your body's ability to get sleep. So thinking about how much caffeine are you consuming at the moment, and caffeine can be found in all sorts of things. It's not necessarily just in coffee. Tea has the same amount of caffeine often as coffee. Equally, green tea has caffeine in it, chocolate has caffeine in it. There are all sorts of hidden sources of caffeine, so just being mindful of that. And we all have different sensitivities to it. Some people could drink a coffee before bed and be absolutely fine, but other people are very sensitive to caffeine. So just thinking about how much caffeine you're consuming and the time at which you're having it. And the advice would be to try and make that as far away from bedtime as possible. Actually, caffeine is still in our system, can still be in our systems for up to 6 hours. So even, you know, a cup of coffee at 4 o'clock could still be having an effect on your night's sleep. So just really, I'd encourage you just to experiment with that. I wouldn't encourage you to cut it down, cut it out completely, but just look at gradually reducing it. Or you might say to yourself that you're not going to have any caffeinated drinks after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe. That could be a really good starting point. And there are all sorts of good caffeine substitutes, decaffeinated drinks now on the market, so that's well worth a try. We know as well that diet has an effect on sleep, so thinking about what you're eating and when you're eating it as well is really important. So are you eating very high sugar foods? And I know that can be really tempting. If you're having difficulty sleeping, it can be really tempting to reach for that high energy food, the cake, the chocolate, the caffeine, in order to give us that lift. And temporarily it does give us that lift, which is why it's so tempting, but actually it also then comes with a crash, so it creates a bit of a roller coaster, which isn't helpful for your sleep. So actually trying to think about eating regularly and eating foods that release energy slowly, so slow releasing carbohydrates are most helpful, and be mindful about what time you're eating as well. You know, if you're eating an hour before bed or 2 hours before bed, you're going to bed on a full stomach and you're still digesting that food, actually that's not conducive for a good night's sleep. That's your body's still working at that point. So think about trying to really not eat anything for a good 3 or 4 hours prior to bed. Or it might be the opposite. It might be you're someone that doesn't eat very much, and actually some nights you notice you're going to bed hungry. That's not helpful either. You know, if you're hungry in bed, that's going to be disturbing your night's sleep. So it might be that you just make sure you're having enough to eat as well. There are also certain foods that you can eat to help induce sleep, actually, and these are foods that contain an amino acid called tryptophan. and it's known, tryptophan is known to help induce sleep. So foods such as bananas, almonds, turkey, milk, they contain that amino acid, and if you're interested in that, it might be that you Google that and look for a bit more information on it, and then you start to slowly increase your intake of them foods. You might find that it takes a few weeks, but actually, or not, for some people it could just be, sometimes we can overcomplicate these things. It might be that actually by eating a banana in the evening that contains tryptophan, or having a milky drink in the evening, that's actually really helpful, and that helps to improve your sleep. So certainly worth giving a try. Alcohol is another one. I'm sure we're all aware of the impact of alcohol, and I know, if you are having difficulty sleeping, it can be really tempting to have an extra glass of wine, because for most people that helps, or they think that helps them to get to sleep, and in a way it might do, but actually we know that it stops you from alcohol stops you from going into REM sleep, which is the sort of deep restorative sleep. So actually we know that alcohol negatively affects sleep quality. So if you're somebody that is, although you're sleeping, you're not aware that you're waking, you might find that you're just not feeling refreshed, and you're feeling quite groggy, like you haven't had good sleep. And if you're somebody that is actually sort of started to notice you've increased your alcohol consumption, it might be worth thinking about cutting that out, because that certainly could be stopping you from having that good quality restorative sleep. The other idea is thinking about the environment in which you're sleeping. So thinking about your bedroom. Is your bedroom an environment that you associate with peace and tranquility? Is it a relaxing environment? We know that our brain works on association, so we really want to associate the bedroom with a place of feeling calm and relaxed. And with so many of us now working from home, I know I've spoken to clients that the laptop has crept into the bedroom all of a sudden. We're accessible, our phones have crept into the bedroom, and actually for your quality of sleep, that's really, really unhelpful. We know that being on is, you don't want to associate the bedroom with work, so really do everything you can to avoid having your laptop in your bedroom. Ideally avoid having any kind of stimulating item in there, so avoid having your telly in there, avoid having your iPhone. It might be that simply by removing your iPhone, having your iPhone downstairs instead, that in itself helps to improve your sleep quality. We know that the blue light that's emitted from these devices negatively affects sleep. It prohibits your body's production of melatonin, which is your sleepy hormone. Having all these devices in your room is not helpful for sleep. So I'd really encourage you to just go cold turkey, just remove them out of your bedroom. If you really can't do that, it might be that you make sure you keep your phone over the other side of your bedroom, or I've had clients in the past that will go around and put blue tack on the little lights that these devices emit, so that it's not having an effect on their sleep. Equally, you can change your iPhone settings now to nighttime mode again, so it doesn't let off that stimulating blue light. Thinking about the temperature as well inside your bedroom. Is it, make sure it's not too hot, not too cold. Make sure you're comfortable. Is your bed comfortable? Is it dark enough? Do you need to get some blackout blinds maybe? Just making sure it's a really calm environment is so important. Another tip is having an evening bath or shower. If you're somebody that has a morning shower instead of an evening shower, it might be that you try switching it, because we know that actually, obviously, when you have a shower, hot shower or bath, it raises your body temperature, and then when you get out of the bath, it drops your body temperature. And we know that actually that's what happens when your body goes from light sleep into deep sleep. So there's 4 stages to sleep. There's the first 2 stages, which are your lighter sleep, and there's the REM sleep, which is the last 2 stages, and it's the deeper sleep. And when your body goes from stage 2 to stage 3, actually your body temperature drops a fraction. So actually, by having a hot bath and then allowing yourself to cool down before bedtime, that mimics that rise and drop in temperature, which can almost sort of trick your mind into thinking it's going to sleep. So it could be worth a try. The other thing to think about is no clocks as well. That's another thing. So no clock watching. You know, often when we have difficulty sleeping, it's tempting to keep looking at the clock. But the problem with that is every time we look at the clock and we're not asleep, we're reinforcing that message that I'm not sleeping here, I'm not getting to sleep. So it increases that frustration, and it increases that association of feeling frustrated when you're in bed. So the advice would be to try and remove the clocks from the bedroom. If that's not realistic, if you need an alarm to get up, then it might be that you just make sure your clock is you're not looking at it, you're not checking it basically, or your phone is down so you can't see it. So yeah, I'd say do whatever you can to not get into that cycle of clock watching, because that's not helpful. The other thing is exercise as well. We know that daytime exercise is really helpful for improving your quality of sleep, and ideally the earlier in the day you can schedule that exercise, the more of a positive effect it has on your sleep. So just sort of talking about them circadian rhythms, your body likes to keep to that natural rhythm. So being very active in the morning then encourages the body to feel more relaxed in the evening. So if you're somebody that's already exercising quite a lot, it might be that you just think about moving it up to earlier in the day. And ideally, if you can do that exercise outside, if that can be your one piece of exercise, outdoor exercise that we're allowed at the moment, if you can make it in the day and if you can make it in the morning and outside, then you're gonna improve you're kind of going to get more bang for your buck in a way, in terms of improving your chances of getting a good night's sleep. I'd encourage you not to do too much vigorous exercise too close to bedtime, because that's having a stimulating effect. And again, it doesn't have to be, if you're someone that's not exercising very much, expecting yourself to go out there and do loads is probably unrealistic, particularly if you're not sleeping very well. It's probably the last thing you're going to feel like doing. So just start small. It might be that you just start with a morning walk, walk around the block outside. Them small changes can really start to have a positive effect. The other thing is to think about something that we call sleep rituals. So at the moment, more than ever, it's so important that we have a wind down period. At the moment, our workers come into our homes, and we are on all the time. We're accessible all the time. We're working from home now. A lot of people are homeschooling. A lot of people are, have concerns about friends, relatives. Our mind is active all of the time. So I think to expect yourself to go from this busy headspace to sleep is probably unrealistic. So it's really important to incorporate a wind down period before bed in order to help yourself wind down and switch off and release some of them stresses and strains from the day. So it might be that you have a diary, and you maybe you write down some of them things that are on your mind, and we will talk a bit more about that in another recording, ways to help let go of that worry. So that could be something to write down everything that's on your mind, could be something that you incorporate into your bedtime routine. Start your bedtime routine, I'd say about 30-40 minutes before bed. Maybe start to turn down the lights. It might be that you start to turn down the lights much earlier than that, 7-8 o'clock. By dimming the lights in the house, you're improving your own circadian rhythm of, it's bedtime now, it's time to relax, it's time to unwind. It might be that you just incorporate some yoga, or some breathing techniques, or some stretches. I think parents are very used to setting a bedtime routine for their children, where they, read their child a book or make them a warm drink. They have that quiet time before bedtime, and yet as adults we expect ourselves to go from 100 miles an hour to sleep, which just isn't realistic. So having a similar routine that you maybe provide for your child might be helpful. So it might be that you read a book, or you have a warm drink, anything that just helps you to relax and switch off, and get you into that really nice headspace for a good night's sleep. There are some really nice breathing techniques out there, that can help to get you into that relaxed state. One that is particularly helpful is a technique called the 4-7-8 breath. The idea behind this is that you breathe in through your nose through the count of 4. You then hold that breath for the count of 7, and then you take a long exhale through your mouth for the count of 8. And that one's particularly helpful for helping to induce a good night's sleep. So I'd encourage you to maybe give that a try. Maybe just 2 or 3 cycles of that breath, probably no more than 5. And it might be that actually initially you find that quite challenging. It can be at first, but with practice it becomes easier. So that could be something you could incorporate into your nighttime routine. I'd just encourage you to find what works for you, really. So they're the basics. If you try all of them things, or if you feel you've done a lot of that already and you're still struggling, the advice would be to, and this is a bit of a last resort because it's not particularly easy to do, but the advice would be to, we want to try and break that association that is common to fall into when you're having difficulty with sleeping. So when you start to have difficulty with sleeping, the brain starts to associate the bedroom as a place of frustration, and that's not what we want. So to try and break that, there's a specific sleep retraining technique that involves you removing yourself from the bedroom. So the advice would be, if you've not fallen asleep within 20 minutes, it would be to remove yourself from the bedroom, go and do a very sort of non-stimulating activity. I don't advise you go and do your ironing or anything like that, but I'd advise you just do some, maybe some of them relaxation breaths, maybe have a warm drink, just do something non-stimulating, and then go back up and try again. And again, if you haven't fallen asleep within 20 minutes, the advice would be to repeat that process of removing yourself from the bedroom, and then trying again. And the advice would be to keep doing that step until eventually you fall asleep. It's not easy when you're comfy and you're warm in bed. It is quite a challenge to pull yourself out of the bedroom, but actually that can be a really effective technique for breaking that cycle. So it might be worth giving that a try. And the advice would be that even if you do that several times, that getting up, removing yourself, going back, to still get up at the same time the next day, no matter how many times you've done that, in order to maintain that routine for the following night. So I'm really hopeful that you've found some of them tips helpful. I wouldn't encourage you to try and do it all at once. Maybe just pick 1 or 2 that feel relevant for you, and give them a go. If you are struggling with your mental health at the moment, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling low, if you're feeling stressed, and if you feel like you need some further support, IAPT is still very much here to support people. So please do give us a call, and we can look at ways of helping you, and all our contact details can be found on our Facebook page. Okay, thanks.